As I was saying, a lot of healing and restoration took place, but I was left feeling extremely empty. Like it's something that you can't really explain to anyone who really hasn't felt the loss of a parent. It's almost like you're left alone in this world. Even the people that you're connected to, through blood relation, and things like that, it just, the connection feels different. You feel like, kind of a fish swimming by themselves. And so I started going through some really tough times, and I was, I ended up getting pregnant. And I was never going to have kids. Never going to have kids. That just wasn't my thing. I was going to be the businesswoman, travel the world. I didn't have time for that, right? So I got pregnant, and I got pregnant a couple months after my mom passed away. And um, didn't know the first thing about how to be a mom, what it looked like. I never babysat, none of it, none of it. So, but I think that was somehow, you know, my inner person, my inner woman reaching for that bond of like a mother daughter or mother child bond. Um, because I decided to keep the baby, and it wasn't the best time in life to do it. I was just finishing nursing school. I actually um, graduated, finished my classes, but marched with the baby outside of the belly. Okay, um, so finished classes in like May, and then we marched in like June. I think she was 6 weeks or something like that. And but it was okay. It was okay. I was in a relationship with a really good guy, responsible guy, and that was also, part of the reason why I thought that it was okay. Although at this point I had no idea. Like as I look at it now, like all these things, God lined that up for me at the time. The business life and all that, being here and there and doing all those things, that wasn't really all that I was supposed to do. Um, so I learned to be a mom. I learned to be a mom very hands on, by figuring it out. But it was tough. It was tough because I didn't put any thought into it as sometimes, we do. I'm sure there's a lot of you out there that may have had children and, may have not had the plan, but, you learn how to do it um, as you go. Um, but through that time, I was trying to figure out, well, why so much pain in life? I'd had a lot of things, a lot of hurts that had happened, um, due to some things because of our family, with my mom, due to my mom, and just some pretty rough things. And so I was still hollow, even though I had my daughter. I was still hollow, and there was some pain there. And so I actually moved to Florida when she was about 4.5 years old, because I realized in New York I was not going to be able to, ever really buy a house or really have anything that was stable, unless I worked, two, three jobs, because I didn't marry her dad. I chose not to do that. Nothing really to do with him, just it wasn't my time. It wasn't, he wasn't my person. Um, but Florida seemed like a better idea because, you could buy a house for lesser money, and the weather seemed nice. You can go anywhere and work as a nurse, even though, I made less money down there. It just seemed to be a good move, and I had the wherewithal to do it. Always been someone that could get up and go because I had the job, always had the personality, always had, God has put that in me that I can go anywhere, do anything, and kind of make it work, like camping until you build the house kind of thing. Um, so when I moved to Florida, I was still in search of this this thing to fill this hollow that was in me, because I didn't understand why I felt so hollow, why I didn't understand, why people were the way they were, and, what are we here for? Um, are we born just to die? Is that it? And if that's the case, and then so many people are dying, painful deaths, as a young nurse, I got a job right out of the gate, and that's one of those times that being a brown woman, a woman of being a black woman, actually worked out in my favor. I was hired as the very first black nurse in a very affluent white neighborhood in New Jersey. I worked at Valley Hospital in Ridgewood, New Jersey, one of the first hospitals to have computer charting because, of course, they had money. So, and it was funny because God opened that door, and I know that was God because I got the job when I was pregnant. I went there and interviewed pregnant as a graduate nurse. Still, actually, I don't think I even graduated. I think I had like um, the interview. I think I was like 5 or 6 months pregnant, but visibly pregnant. So got the job, and God set me up in that too. And but still, I didn't understand. I didn't know who God was. I went to Sunday school. Mom sent me to Sunday school. I have an aunt. There's usually one of the matriarchs in the family that tends to be our spiritual person, or someone. There's someone that we have that we know that um, goes to church, or we know that they can get a prayer through, or we know that they have a special relationship with the Lord, or very spiritual. I have some very spiritual women in my family, um, not just religious, but spiritual in the sense of healing and things like that. So when I got to Florida, I met someone in a laundry room at my apartment complex, and they invited me to church. And I was like, well, I was ready. Let me go to church. Church was a, a fine place for me. I didn't feel that there should be anything wrong. Let me go to church. Maybe there's something at church, and also to build community, to meet friends, to meet people. So I went, and it was a vibrant church. I do remember it being, there were some things that were alluring. They did a lot with Bible study, outside of the church, to build community, to help you actually to understand the Bible. And I felt a warmth. I felt um, a belonging. I knew these people were reaching out to me. They were trying to help me. They were trying to, they were being God's hands. And I'm so grateful for that. Um, because that was the beginning of my spiritual walk. Um, it took some time. I visited a couple of churches. I joined a church, and I'm somebody who does things, either I'm doing it 100% or I'm doing zero. So I started studying, and I was interested. I was interested and I was hungry because it began to make sense, the beginning, and I could see in the Bible, the connection to how we do things now, how we feel the way we feel, some of the struggles and the challenges that we go through and deal with in life. I saw them in the Bible. I saw that, and it was amazing. And I gave my life to the Lord. So a lot of us who have been churched or religious at all know that that means you're walking with the Lord. It basically means you know that you're not living this life by yourself, and you basically ask God to take the wheel. The thing, Jesus, take the wheel, but it's kind of a formal thing, and you decide to do that, and you um, kind of give your life over to a better way of living, a life that is more in line to what God or your Creator has had for you all along. And that was exhilarating for me because it filled that hole. And I won't say it all at one time, but when it began to, I wanted more. And so I began to study more. And during that time, I was in Florida. I spent about 3 or 4 years, maybe 3 years in Florida. And I realized that without a support group or support system, it's really hard to be a single mom. I tried to be married. I did that. Just everything, you know, red-blooded American girl. Okay, you want companionship, and at the time, was dating, and when I started going to church, I learned that you should be married and have a more securely spiritual family. Marriage would put you in right standing with God. And so, like I said, I'm that kind of person. I'm going to do things all the way, or I'm not going to do it at all. So I did marry the gentleman that I was seeing at the time, and I thought it was okay because he was a pastor's kid. He was very estranged from God at the time. Uh, when I say estranged, doing things that people think that, people that know God don't do or shouldn't do. But we were getting along, and I went on and did that. Note to self, and some of us women who have been there and walked those steps. Sometimes you have to walk with God by yourself, um, and let God give you who you're supposed to have. And there's a gift in singleness. But as a young woman, it's really hard for young women. It was hard for me, and I know it's hard for women now still to actually be that, to be by themselves. Um, but the marriage fell apart, and he began to make my life miserable, miserable. And a lot of it was because it was out of alignment. It was out of alignment. He was never supposed to be my person. He was going to church. He was doing the church things for me, and for show. But the conversion of the heart never was there. And the crazy thing about it is that I didn't really know it. I thought that things were like looked a little weird when he would do certain things, and I was like, it just didn't line up. Some of the things he was doing and talking, the way he was, it wasn't like the love that I was, it wasn't like God's love that I saw. And lo and behold, one day I was taking our clothes to the dry cleaners. We had some um, winter stuff, even though Florida, you don't really have winters, but some leathers and things that need to be cleaned. And so I was getting all the stuff ready, and I was going to take it to the dry cleaners, and went to get all the stuff out of the pockets, and came out with a tax return from his pocket of one of his coats or jackets, and it had two children's names on it, two children's names that had his last name. And I was like, oh, that's weird. um he only had one child. And in fact, he was at work at a second job when this happened, because when I found out that he had this child and that he wasn't taking care of said child, um, I was like, we got to do something about this. This is not, I can't be in a position of we're raising my daughter, you're around my daughter, we're living a certain life, and your child is living with her mom, and they're living just not right, not right. The woman was struggling, and she had been struggling for some years. And me as a woman, I've always been about my sisters, women power. I'm not going to. I've never been someone who would date a person that, you know, had a husband or a wife. I'm sorry, a wife, or a partner or something like that. I just believe that you should respect. Um, Relationships and people and children. My father left my mother when I was 3, and he was not, um, I don't know, I shouldn't say that he wasn't. I don't know him. So I do know that he left a relationship with my mother when I was 3, because my mother gave him an ultimatum. He was a married man, and she said that if he wasn't going to leave, I imagine there probably was conversations, as there are many times in those situations, conversations about maybe he was going to leave, maybe he promised her he was going to leave, and she got tired of it, and she said, look, if you're not going to do that, then I'm just going to take my child, and I'm going to leave. And we moved to another town, and he did not pursue. And from what I understand, if he pursued, it was very lightly. He might have asked about us or something, but it was never like he came and tried to um, stay in communication with me just for the sake of being a father, because he'd fathered me. I was his child, but he had a wife and he had 3 other children. So I came to I understand it now as and this is not to make it right, because I don't care what you do, that you're still a parent, you're always a parent. You make that decision, uh, having the ability to bring life into the world. Once you do that, you then make the changes and the alterations that need to be made in order to be a parent to that child. But he did not do that, and I grew up hurt by that and lacking. I didn't have a father. I didn't have uh, that second income. I didn't have a mother who was stable, because she had a partner. She had someone that was there with her to help raise myself and my brother. And it hurt. It hurt, and it broke my life. So I wasn't about to be a party to any shenanigans, you know. So I was like, no, you're gonna have to get a second job if you have to, but you're gonna have to pay child support. You got to do what you got to do. So I'm looking at this tax return, and I'm like, what's going on? And it hit my spirit all wrong. I knew that something wasn't right. Either he was, adding children to his tax return to pad it to get more money, but whatever it was, I was trying to live a right life, and I'm working hard. I'm working, 12-hour shifts. I'm working at night, to try to do the best for my daughter and for us, as a family, and, for what I thought I should, have as, um, a woman that's trying to have better. We always should do better. Every generation should do better. So I called him. We didn't even have cell phones at that time. I called his job and I said, I need to talk to you. And he said, what's wrong? And I said, I looked in your pocket and I found this um, tax return. And who is this other child? He said, I'll tell you when I get home. And let me tell you, that was not the thing that I needed to hear. I'm sure that wasn't it wasn't the right thing, or maybe it wasn't like a smart thing to call him at work, but I needed to know. I was married. I'm trying to figure this whole thing out. I'm like, what is going on? Um, I took him with a child. I took him knowing that he was going to have to do some things to support his child that would take away from what life I thought, you know, I wanted from, you know, my partner, my husband at the time. And I was like, so let's all play our part. Let's do what we're supposed to do here. So, if you're complicating this thing, I need to know why and what's going on. Well, when he got home, he did tell me the truth. He said that because of the conversations we had when we were dating and how I felt about men who left their children and did not support their children and did not father their children, that he thought that he could get away with telling me about one because he was married to that woman that he had a child with. But this child he had afterwards, and she was from another woman, and I did not agree with all of the, you know, all this you planting your seed all these places and not taking care of your children. You do it, that's one thing. Hey, things happen. People feel things go on. I'm not a Bible thumper per se. I do believe in God very much. I do believe there's a right way to do things. I don't believe that it's always your right is my right. And even if you didn't do things the right way, Jesus came so that we could erase some things. And I don't mean erase like make them go away, but we can start over and we can do better. And so he thought that that would not be accepted by me, and he was right. Because if I had known that he had done that, I would have said, "No, I can't date you. I can't do that." And that was another hit of being hurt by a selfish act. Um, a man choosing to be selfish so that they could have what they wanted, and it you know largely impacted my life because now I'm married to you. So you thought now that uh, you've got me and legally, now what am I supposed to do? Well, I tried. Being a woman that loves, being a woman that was in the church, was taught to forgive, um, and it wasn't like some easy thing. It wasn't like there was some tumultuous times in that house because I'm not someone who sits down and lets anybody roll over me. That just doesn't happen. And I felt that's kind of what was going on. Of course, he did a lot of song and dance and made things seem like that wasn't what what he meant to do. He didn't mean to hurt me. It was just kind of a byproduct of his bad choice. And okay, I did that, so that's fine. So um seeing that my family life wasn't what it needed to be as strong, I'm like, let me go back home. Let me go back home where I know people and I have family, and I have sister girls and cousins and people that can help me raise this child, and I don't have to be, alone in this situation. So I decided to move back to New York after about 3.5 years. And funny thing, I, when you're manifesting things and you don't even know you're manifesting it, so when you like minds, will be together. I met a lady at work, and we would talk a lot about the Lord together, and she would tell me about her walk with God, and all these things in her family, and she started to listen to some of the things that was happening to me in my life and in my house. And she was the same nationality as this gentleman. He was from the Caribbean, and she told me, and I thought, and let me tell you, God will send people your way to rescue you from yourself, from your circumstances, from your bad choices. But we have to be in a place willing to be able to listen. And she was a woman in the church, and a lot of times people tell you in church, divorce is not an option. I don't believe that to be true. I don't think every church is that way, and I don't believe that is that's not what I believe in my understanding. Um, but I was going to a certain type of church, and even the people back in New York were going to a certain kind of church, and my papa, who you will hear me talk a lot about as time goes on, he was a pastor, and he was encouraging me to try to, stick with the marriage, try to make it work. This thing that I found out is not something that you can't get over, you can't get through. But that lady spoke wisdom, and she told me, she said, do not bring that man, do not bring him back to New York when you leave. When you leave, take you and your child and go. Okay. Well, you will find out in the next episode that I did not listen to what she said. I let, loneliness, I think at that time, lust, because I was like, oh, I'd gotten used to having a husband, I got used to having a man around, I gotten used to the and I'm gonna be frank, I mean, this is life, this is who we are, we're made as human beings, we are sexual beings, and that was a problem as well, and it's a problem uh, that we I don't know. It kind of played its way out in my life, throughout the years. It was a thing, um, not knowing how to control that, and I did get to a place. I did get to a place after a while that wasn't uh, the only thing, and it didn't run my life. But as a young person, um, it did at that time. So I went home. I sent my daughter ahead, went home, got a place, but told him that if he was going to come, he was going to have to stop all the weed smoking and all this stuff, and just the excessive stuff. It was like, excessive, but not focused, and I'm laser focused, I'm about, you know, let's go, let's figure out, if we're going to go to church, if we're going to study, let's study, if we're going to, you know, save money, let's save money, if we're going to, go on vacation, let's do that. To the whatever I said, to the nth degree, 100% in, be 100% in. He was just not that person, and because he wasn't my person, it wasn't his time to do all those things, it was my time to do all those things, and what I was doing was dragging extra weight in the namesake of being right and trying to be right with the Lord. And truly, that was what I was trying to do. I really wanted to do right by God. I didn't want to disappoint him. I believe that, he can take you through anything and help you get through any uh, over any obstacle, through anything, and he can. And when I say he, I don't just mean God is God being a man. God is a spirit. There's when you get a little bit more into studying the word, you find that God is spirit, and so a lot of people will say Father God, Mother God. I just say God, and I do know Jesus as my Savior. But when you hear me say God, this is what I mean. Um, so yeah, there's a lot to share, and I will say that the reason for me starting this channel is that if I can help somebody in this position, I don't know who they are, if it would be another nurse, if it would be another mother, a single mother, if it would be a woman of my age now, um, to make some decisions to live the life that God really has for you to live, then I have done my job. I know that now that is my purpose, not only that in laying hands on to help people as a nurse, but in sharing of my heart, being transparent, maybe being uncomfortable. You know, it wasn't the most comfortable thing to do, was to make the decision to go on and to do this, to share things that maybe I wasn't proud of at one time. Now I really don't care. I've gotten to the age that, you know what, I am happy that I made it through. There are some things that God has brought me through, and I want people to know, because I know there's some times that we are hanging on by our fingernails. So that is my why of starting this channel. I am so happy. I am so grateful for whoever stops by and tunes in. I am so grateful for my family, who's helped me with this decision, with this piece of the journey. Even, you know, getting my phone together, figuring out how to use a microphone, all that. My friends that will, no doubt, as soon as they see me, rally behind me and help support me. Um, but that is my why. I was also extremely motivated by a young woman. Her name is Glow Atomo. Big shout out to Glow. Been following her for the last probably, I don't know, maybe 9 months, and I'm not a follower. I don't, like I said, I don't do social media. I came across her channel because I was doing some investigating, some work to figure out about trips. I was doing some research about vacations and things like that. So I actually started with someone else, and then got a hold of her channel, and she is just a bright light, and almost, I feel like she's like a younger version of me, doing some things that are just amazing. And she's doing it fearlessly. You know, um, she's sharing her story, and I know that can't be easy all the time. And I am just so grateful for her coming across my path of my very small, small exposure to social media. But Glow, you help me. You help me, and I am jumping on the bandwagon of Black women who are putting themselves out there to share and walk in sisterhood as we walk through this thing called life. Through the good times, the hard times, because even the hard times are all for our good. Scripture says God works all things out for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And that's each and every one of us. So it has been a fabulous time talking to you. Can't wait to do it again. My goal is to post and share with you guys on some sort of topic that um, I have some sort of knowledge about, which is, you know, hopefully a lot. I've been on this earth a long time. I am going to be 58 years old in about just a little bit over a week. So I'm excited about this journey. And as we go on, if there are questions or topics that you would like me to share, you know, about health, family, studying the word, um, being a friend, just being a woman, just life, I would like to be here for you in whatever way I can be. God bless you guys. Have a great evening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.